They told us the mission was simple. Get in, retrieve the data, get out. 48 hours, maximum. Nobody mentioned we'd be walking into a trap that would test everything we thought we knew about loyalty, sacrifice, and what it really means to be a soldier. My name is Captain Marcus Webb, and this is the story of Operation Silent Thunder. The mission that never made it into any official record. The one that taught me the hardest lesson of my military career. It was March 2019. Our team, call sign Reaper 6, was deployed to the Kandahar province in Afghanistan. We were a tight unit, 5 men who'd been through hell together more times than I could count. There was Lieutenant James Rivera, our communications expert, a kid from Texas who could hack into any system you put in front of him. Staff Sergeant Cole Mitchell, our medic and the oldest guy in the squad at 38. A man who'd saved more lives than he'd taken, and that's saying something in our line of work. Then there was Corporal Danny Hayes, our youngest member at 23. A sniper whose hands never shook, no matter what. And finally, Sergeant First Class Victor Brahms, my second in command, the guy I'd trust with my life without a second thought. We'd received intelligence that a high-value target, a weapons dealer named Kazem Nazari, was operating out of a compound in the mountains. But this wasn't about Nazari himself. He had information on his encrypted server about a planned attack on a NATO base that would kill hundreds. Our job was to infiltrate his compound, extract the hard drive, and disappear before anyone knew we were there. Simple, right? That's what I thought too. We inserted under cover of darkness, rappelling from helicopters into terrain so hostile it made the surface of Mars look inviting. The mountains were unforgiving, jagged rocks, narrow passages, and temperatures that dropped below freezing the moment the sun disappeared. But we were prepared. We trained for environments like this. We were ready for anything, or so I believed. The compound sat in a valley, surrounded by natural rock formations that made it nearly impossible to approach without being seen. Nearly impossible, but not completely. We'd studied the satellite imagery for weeks. There was a dry riverbed that snaked around the eastern side, providing just enough cover if we timed our movement right. We moved in single file, night vision painting the world in shades of green. Rivera was on point, monitoring enemy communications. Every few minutes he'd raise his fist, and we'd freeze, becoming part of the landscape while guards passed within meters of our position. My heart hammered in my chest, but my breathing stayed controlled, slow, measured. That's what separates professionals from amateurs. The ability to keep your body calm when your mind is screaming at you to run. It took us 3 hours to reach the compound's perimeter. 3 hours of moving at a crawl. Every sense heightened, every muscle coiled tight. When we finally pressed against the outer wall, I allowed myself one moment of relief. We were in position. Rivera tapped into their security system, looping the camera feeds. Mitchell and Hayes set up a perimeter watch, while Brahms and I prepared to breach. The plan was surgical. We'd identified Nazari's office on the 2nd floor, in and out in 15 minutes. That's all we needed. But here's something they don't teach you in all those tactical manuals and strategy courses. Here's the lesson that cost me more than I was prepared to pay. Sometimes the enemy isn't where you expect them to be. Sometimes the threat isn't external. Sometimes it's walking right beside you. We breached the compound at 0200 hours. The interior was exactly as the intelligence had described. Narrow corridors, minimal lighting, guards stationed at predictable intervals. We neutralized them silently, moving like shadows through the building. Everything was going according to plan. Too well, I realized later. Everything was going too well. We reached Nazari's office without significant resistance. Rivera bypassed the electronic lock. In under a minute, the room was empty, just as predicted. Nazari himself wasn't there. He rarely slept in the compound, always moving between locations, but the safe was there, built into the wall behind a painting of the Afghan mountains. Mitchell kept watch at the door while the rest of us entered. Brahms pulled out the plasma cutter we'd brought specifically for the safe. It was old school, Soviet-era construction, but with the right tools and enough time, anything can be opened. That's when Rivera's radio crackled. His face went pale in the dim light of the office. "Captain, we've got a problem. I'm picking up chatter. They know we're here. They've known since we breached the perimeter." My blood ran cold. "How is that possible? You looped the feeds." "I did, sir. But there's something else. Another system I didn't detect. They've been tracking us the whole time." Before I could respond, the lights in the compound blazed to life. Alarms screamed through the corridors. And then gunfire. Lots of it. We were compromised. The mission was blown. And we were trapped in a hostile compound, with an unknown number of enemies between us and extraction. "Abort!" I shouted. "Everyone out, now!" But Brahms didn't move. He kept working on the safe, the plasma cutter's blue flame eating through the metal. "Brahms, I gave you an order." He looked at me, and something in his eyes made me freeze. It wasn't fear. It wasn't determination. It was something else. Something I couldn't quite identify. "We need this intel, Captain," he said calmly, as if we weren't under attack. 2 more minutes. Bullets tore through the doorframe. Mitchell returned fire, his rifle barking in controlled bursts. Hayes's sniper rifle cracked from somewhere down the hall. He'd found a position, but we were outnumbered and outgunned. "We don't have 2 minutes. Move." The safe door swung open. Brahms reached inside and pulled out a hard drive, smaller than a deck of cards. He held it up, and in that moment, something clicked in my mind. Something about the way he looked at it, not with relief or urgency, but with satisfaction. That's when I knew. "You set us up," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But in that chaos-filled room, he heard me perfectly. Brahms smiled. It was a sad smile, almost apologetic. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I really am. But some opportunities are too valuable to pass up." The betrayal hit me harder than any bullet could. Victor Brahms, my second in command, the man I'd served with for 7 years, the man who'd pulled me out of an ambush in Syria and carried me 3 miles with a dislocated shoulder, the man who'd been at my wedding, who knew my wife's name and my daughter's birthday. He was the leak. He'd been selling information to Nazari for months, maybe years. Why? It was all I could manage to ask. "My daughter needs treatment. Experimental therapy. In Germany. It costs more than I'll make in 20 years of service." Nazari offered me a way out, one last score, and I could save her life. I understood that motivation. God help me. I understood it. But understanding doesn't mean forgiving. There's another way. There's always another way. Not for me, not anymore. He backed toward the window, the hard drive clutched in his hand. "I gave them our insertion point, our extraction coordinates, everything. But I also left you a way out. The northwest corridor, 3rd door on the left. It leads to an old drainage system. Follow it east, and you'll come out beyond the perimeter. You've got maybe 5 minutes before they realize it exists. Come with us. We'll figure this out. I'll testify on your behalf." "It's too late for that, Marcus. I made my choice. Now you need to make yours. Save your men or try to stop me." More gunfire. An explosion somewhere below us shook the entire building. Rivera's voice in my ear, urgent and strained. "Captain, we need to move now." I looked at Brahms, then at the door where my team was fighting for their lives. The choice should have been impossible. But here's what that moment taught me. The lesson that's haunted me every day since. Sometimes being a leader means making a choice that destroys you inside. Sometimes it means letting the guilty escape so the innocent can survive. I chose my team. "Go," I told Brahms. "Get out. But know this. You're not saving your daughter. You're killing the father she needs. The man you were, the The man you're throwing away, that's who she needs, not the money. Something flickered in his eyes. Regret maybe, or recognition, but he didn't stop. He went out that window and disappeared into the night, and I never saw him again. We fought our way to the corridor he'd mentioned. It was real. The drainage system existed, exactly where he said it would be. We crawled through filth and darkness while the compound exploded around us. While Mazzari's men searched for bodies to fill with bullets, Hayes took a round in the leg. Mitchell's hand was broken from a grenade blast. Rivera had burns across his shoulder. But we all made it out. We survived because a traitor gave us a chance. The extraction team found us 3 miles from the compound, covered in blood and mud and shame. The debrief lasted a week. I told them everything. About Brahms, about the betrayal, about the choice I made. They stripped him of his rank posthumously. Officially, he died in the compound. His family received his benefits. His daughter got her treatment. She's in college now, studying medicine. She'll never know what her father did, what he gave up, what he became. The hard drive Brahms took contained the attack plans, yes, but it also had names, lists of assets Nazari had cultivated within NATO forces. Brahms wasn't the only one. There were others, driven by desperation or greed or ideology. The intelligence agencies used that information to roll up the entire network. They prevented the attack. Hundreds of lives were saved. Brahms's betrayal, his final act of selling out his brothers, accidentally became the key to dismantling the entire operation. I don't know if he planned it that way. I want to believe he did. I want to believe that some part of the man I knew was still in there, trying to make it right, but I'll never know for sure. So what's the lesson here? What did Operation Silent Thunder teach me about being a soldier? About leadership? About loyalty? It's this. The world isn't divided into heroes and villains. It's filled with people making impossible choices, with limited information and unlimited consequences. Victor Brahms was both a traitor and a father, trying to save his child. He was both the enemy and the reason we survived. He was a good man who did terrible things, and terrible things that resulted in good outcomes. As leaders, as soldiers, as human beings, we want clarity. We want to know who to trust, who to fight, who to follow. But real life doesn't offer that luxury. Real life is ambiguous and contradictory and painful. The lesson isn't that you should trust everyone, or that you should trust no one. It's that you have to make decisions anyway. You have to lead even when you're not certain. You have to choose your path knowing you might be wrong, knowing you might fail, knowing that the consequences might haunt you forever. After that mission, I struggled. I doubted myself, questioned every decision, saw betrayal around every corner. It nearly destroyed me. My wife noticed first. I wasn't sleeping. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, reliving that moment in Nazari's office, asking myself what I could have done differently. She sat me down one evening, took my hand and said something that finally broke through. Marcus, you can't carry the weight of every choice everyone around you makes. You can only carry your own. And your choice saved 4 lives that night. 4 men went home to their families because of you. That has to count for something. She was right. It did count for something. It counted for everything. I stayed in the service for 3 more years after Operation Silent Thunder. I led 12 more missions, brought every single soldier home alive. When I finally retired, it wasn't because of fear or doubt. It was because I'd learned what I needed to learn. I'd paid the price for wisdom, and now it was time to pass it on. Today, I teach at the War College. I train the next generation of officers, and I tell them this story. Not the sanitized version you'd find in a textbook, but the real one, the messy, painful, complicated truth, because they need to know that leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about making decisions when there are no good options. It's about living with those decisions afterward. I tell them about Victor Brahms. I don't call him a monster. I don't call him a hero. I call him what he was. A man who made a terrible choice for an understandable reason and accidentally created an outcome that saved hundreds of lives. I tell them that they'll face moments like that too. Moments when the right choice isn't clear, when every option seems wrong, when the best you can do is choose the least bad path and hope you can live with yourself afterward. Some of my students ask me if I've forgiven Brahms. It's a fair question. The answer is complicated. Have I forgiven him for the betrayal? For endangering my team? No. Some things can't be forgiven. But have I made peace with what happened? Yes. Because holding on to that anger, that sense of betrayal, it was poisoning me. It was making me less effective as a leader, as a husband, as a father. I had to let it go, not for him but for me. The hardest part isn't the betrayal itself. It's accepting that the person who betrayed you might have had reasons you'd understand, that if you were in their position, facing their impossible choice, you might have done the same thing. That's the real challenge. Maintaining your moral clarity while acknowledging the ambiguity of human motivation. Rivera is still in the service, running cyber operations out of Fort Meade. We have dinner once a month. He doesn't talk about that night much, but when he does, he always asks the same question. Do you think Brahms knew about the full list on that drive? Do you think he set himself up to be the fall guy who accidentally became the hero? I always give him the same answer. I don't know, and I'm not sure it matters. Mitchell retired and became a paramedic in his hometown. He saves lives every day, just like he did in the service. Hayes went to college on the GI Bill, became a high school teacher. He's coaching young people now, giving them direction and purpose. They're both good men who survived a terrible situation and chose to keep being good men afterward. That's the real victory. As for the mission itself, officially, Operation Silent Thunder never happened. The records are classified. The men who were there received no medals, no recognition. That's fine. We weren't doing it for glory. We were doing it because someone had to, because the mission required it, because that's what soldiers do. But unofficially, in the quiet conversations between veterans, in the lessons taught at command schools, in the warnings passed down from experienced operators to new recruits, the story lives on, and the lesson lives on with it. Trust your team, but verify. Love your brothers, but watch for warning signs. Make decisions based on the best information you have, not the information you wish you had. When betrayal comes, and it will come, because we're all human and humans fail each other, don't let it turn you cynical. Don't let it steal your ability to trust, to hope, to believe in the possibility of goodness. That's the real lesson of Operation Silent Thunder. Not that betrayal happens, but that you survive it. Not that people will let you down, but that you choose to keep leading anyway. Not that the world is dark, but that you decide to be a light in it, despite everything. Years after that mission, I received a package. No return address, postmarked from Germany. Inside was a single photograph. It showed a young woman in a medical coat, smiling at the camera, a stethoscope around her neck. On the back, in handwriting I recognized, were 4 words: "Thank you, I'm sorry." I burned the photograph, not out of anger, but because it was the last connection to that night, and I needed to let it go. But before I did, I stood there for a long time, looking at that young woman's smile, thinking about the choices her father made, about the price he paid, about the life he saved. Was it worth it? Did the ends justify the means? I can't answer that. I'm not wise enough, not objective enough. All I know is that a young woman is alive and healing others because of choices made in darkness, in desperation, in a moment of impossible decision. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that has to be enough. To anyone listening to this who's in the service, who's leading men and women in combat, who's making life and death decisions, here's what I want you to take away. You will make mistakes. You will face impossible choices. You will be betrayed by people you trust, hurt by people you love, disappointed by outcomes you couldn't control. None of that changes your responsibility. None of that excuses you from making the hard calls, from standing up when it's easier to sit down, from choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. Leadership is lonely. It's painful. It costs you pieces of yourself you can never get back. But it's also the highest form of service, the purest expression of love for your fellow soldiers, the most important thing you can do. So when you're standing in that moment, and you will stand in that moment, I promise you, when every option looks wrong and you're terrified of making the call, remember this. The fact that you're terrified means you understand the weight of the decision. The fact that you're struggling means you care about the outcome. Those aren't weaknesses. They're the very things that make you capable of leading. Trust yourself, not because you'll always be right, but because someone has to decide, and that someone is you. Lead with courage, not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. And when it's over, when the mission is complete, and the after-action reports are filed, and you're alone with your thoughts in the darkness, give yourself permission to be human, to hurt, to question, to grieve, then get up the next day, and do it again, because that's what soldiers do. That's what leaders do. That's what being truly brave looks like. Operation Silent Thunder ended 7 years ago, but I carry it with me every day. In the classroom where I teach, in the quiet moments with my family, in the decisions I make, and the advice I give. It shaped me, defined me, broke me down and forced me to rebuild myself into something stronger. I wouldn't wish that experience on anyone, but I wouldn't trade it either, because it taught me what I needed to know. It made me who I needed to become. And that, in the end, is what every impossible mission really is. An opportunity to discover what you're made of, to find out if you have what it takes when everything is stripped away, except your choices and their consequences. The answer, I learned, isn't something you know beforehand. It's something you discover in the moment, and then you live with it forever. That's the last signal from Operation Silent Thunder. The final lesson from a mission that never officially happened. Keep it with you. You're going to need it. If this story resonated with you, if you faced your own impossible choices or learned hard lessons about leadership and betrayal, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me about a time when you had to make a decision that changed everything. What did you learn? How did it shape who you are today? Your story matters, and this community is built on shared experiences and mutual respect. And if you found value in this story, if it made you think differently about loyalty, sacrifice, or the weight of command, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. I share real stories from real operators, lessons learned in the field, and the kind of truth they don't teach in basic training. This channel is about more than just combat stories. It's about understanding what it means to lead, to serve, to make the hard calls when everything is on the line. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe it's a fellow veteran struggling with decisions from their past. Maybe it's a young officer about to deploy for the first time. Maybe it's someone in your life who's facing an impossible choice and needs to know they're not alone. These stories have power, but only if they reach the people who need them. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Every week, I bring you real missions, real lessons, and real talk about what it takes to survive not just combat, but the weight of command and the burden of memory. And remember, in the comments section, we respect each other. We're all brothers and sisters here. Regardless of branch, regardless of background, we share the bond of service, and that means something. Until next time, stay sharp, stay ready, and never stop learning from the past, because the next impossible choice might be right around the corner. And when it comes, you'll need every lesson you've learned to make it through. This is Captain Marcus Webb signing off.